Hello guys, welcome back to the Eat Like Ruby podcast. I am here today with a very special in-person guest. Welcome Eats by M to the pod. Welcome back, really.
I know, it was the first one on originally.
I was trying to work out if you were first or Denver. I feel like it might have been you.
I want to say it's definitely me. We'll just go with that. It was me. It's me all along. I'm number one.
Yes. So M is back today. And if people don't know, M is also known as Eats by M.
Yep.
On Instagram, social media, all the places. And she's also co-coach assistant in Eat Like Ruby. So M comes in when we do big programs and we have a lot happening and we just need someone with more meal ideas, answers, input, all of the things. We call on M. So perfect timing for you coming in today because I think literally the week this comes out is also the get started week for the Fat Loss Phase girls, and you're going to be amongst that. So I thought such good timing. It wasn't actually that intentionally planned. We knew we were getting you back on, and then I just sort of worked out I think the week we introduce M to the Fat Loss Phase, we're also going to have her on the pod. So it's such perfect timing. But we're actually doing guest month for the whole of September. So M is the first of, I think, 4 guests. And when I say guests, we often have GMOT on the pod, shout out to GMOT, and we also obviously have Shaq on a lot, but I wanted to bring in some different guests that could just give a bit of a different perspective, different stories, and just kind of mix it up a little bit. So Em is our first guest of guest month, but she was also the actual first ever guest on the Eat Like Ruby podcast, is what we were talking about before. But last time we did it, we did Zoom.
We did, yeah.
And I feel like it's just at a point where content these days is just on another level. I just feel like Zoom is not good enough anymore.
We've got a full studio, some fluffy chairs we can spin around in.
Yeah,
and
we're actually
very extra this time.
Yeah, we've really come a long way since that first ep.
What episode are you up to now? How many episodes
I feel like you are going to be around 90.
That's a big difference. That's a lot
I know,
added since then.
because I think you were literally episode, I'm going to say 5.
Very early on.
Because I did a couple of solos to just introduce the pod, and then you were literally 4 or 5.
Going on for triple digits soon.
Yeah, so we actually are. We'll come up to the 100th, and we've also just hit the 100,000 downloads. So
congratulations.
That is a lot of downloads. Thank you. Very cool and very, exciting.
It's all happening.
It actually is. But I thought it'd be cool to get you in today. I feel like last time you came on, I was in those initial stages of the pod and I was really kind of educating everyone on nutrition and training and what it is that we actually do and sort of our message and our values and all of that. I feel like I've crapped on about that for 2 years now. I think people get it. And I thought it'd just be cool today to come in and I'd love to kind of just talk a little bit more about you and your training and your journey and things like that. And also, obviously, like I said, we're in that initial startup phase of the Eat Like Ruby Fat Loss Phase. It is a massive round. We have a lot of girls in there getting after it for the back half of 2024. And I just thought it'd be cool to kind of speak to them a little bit as well. So let's start with, I feel like this is almost going to be 2 not conflicting combos, but 2 kind of different combos, because what I wanted to talk about with your nutrition and training is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you do a lot of training that's not, the focus isn't body composition.
That's 100% correct.
Yes,
That's 100%
and this
correct.
is what I want to talk about, because I think, obviously lately we've had Shaq on and he's got big goals that have nothing to do with body composition, but I think for females, it's so common to have the body comp goals, and that's totally fine. I mean, I've done the muscle gain thing, the fat loss thing, whatever, but I think especially when people are a bit uneducated and a bit lost, I think we can almost just get into that mindset of assuming that training is 100% about body composition and weight loss and the way we look. So I would just love to know, what does your training look like? What do you train for? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I remember when I first started training, it was body composition focused. It was physique focused. It was you see all these girls online with 6 packs and they're lean and you're like, that's what I'm training for.
Yeah.
And then you get more experience and then you sort of you get a couple of years into your journey and then you realize that your physique isn't everything and there's so much more to training, and you start to think, and God, I'm only 28 years old, but I start to think now like 40, 50, 60-year-old Emma, because I'm like, I'm seeing 30s is getting close,
she's just
guys.
in the gym trying to get the glutes.
You know, you just want to know that like when you're older, you can like get yourself up and look after yourself. And that's like a huge part of my training now. But, you know, my training shifted from full bodybuilding style. I was training, just weight training 5 times a week, but I was also working like a full-time job. Mm-hmm. And when I became a full-time coach, I took on training. And then I decided to dive into the martial arts industry. So
yeah, so this is what I want to talk about. Em's like a bit of a BJJ badass. Are you predominantly doing BJJ or
predominantly BJJ? So I started with Muay Thai.
Yeah. I didn't know whether to say Mu or Muay, so I didn't want to say it at all.
Depends who you ask. Honestly, Muay Thai.
Okay.
So I did start with Muay Thai. That was more like a mental health. It was like getting out, hitting a bag. It was increasing my cardiovascular health. There was no like intent to like fight or anything like that.
You didn't want to like beat the shit out of anyone?
No.
Sometimes.
Not at that point. Not at that point. But I remember, you know, in my class one night, I looked over to the room beside me and there was this like 50-kilo girl and she flipped this like 90-kilo dude over her shoulder and I was like, that's it.
Fuck, we need to get her on the
pod.
pod.
I was like, that's what I want to do. And I almost immediately quit Muay Thai and went to Jiu-Jitsu from there. So almost immediately. I'm not saying just quit your sports, but I thought that's what I want to do. I want to flip like dudes over my shoulder. It sounds weird when I say it like that. But I just become a full-time coach. I had all this time available to myself and I just started taking training a lot more seriously. So, you know, that sort of progressed and, you know, a couple of years down the track, myself and my partner opened a gym called Steel Muay Thai. So we opened a full Muay Thai and fight gym.
That was the start of this year?
So we opened almost 3 years ago. We did 2 years in a garage though.
Yeah.
And then we're almost a year into a commercial space now.
That's so exciting.
I know. So we had a couple fighters over the weekend. So we've got a full fight team now and it's just progressing exactly how it should be. And we're about to open jiu-jitsu in a couple of weeks, so we'll have a full-time jiu-jitsu curriculum as well. So
this is awesome.
But so like my training at the moment looks like 4 weight sessions a week. I do a lot. I do probably Muay Thai twice a week still just for fitness. And then my jiu-jitsu training's probably anywhere between 8 and 14 sessions a week. So
that's wild.
It's a lot of sessions, but
it's so cool though, because I feel like it's really similar to Shaq, where we've had him on recently and he's kind of talked about obviously the triathlon and all that with the riding and the swimming and the running. And we talk about not needing to train multiple times a day when it comes to fat loss and weight loss and body comp and all that. But we were saying with him, and I feel like it's exactly the same with you, you're not training multiple times a day to burn calories.
That's correct.
Like you're doing it
eating a lot.
Really intentional things. Yeah, I want to get to your food in a second. But you're like, there's intention behind every session. You're not just going to the gym to, like I said, burn calories, burn weight, etc. Every session is really structured and intentional for your goals.
Yes, and it's not necessarily like
enjoyment.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like a high intensity either. So I'm not necessarily going in and all my sessions are like full, like 500-600 calorie sessions. Some sessions you go in, it's technique based. So you're an hour just on the floor, sort of like going through movements. You're not really doing
for
a lot
like BJJ.
For jiu-jitsu, let's say, yeah. So you're going in with like more mental focus than you are for like physical.
Yeah.
And then even my weight sessions, 4 sessions, it's perfect. I go in there with the intent for my movements. Anything more than that, can cause the problems with my jiu-jitsu, my Muay Thai training, anything less. And it's like, I just like training my weights as well. It just keeps the balance in my life. But for anyone listening as well, I don't work a full-time job. So I'm not working a 40-hour week with 4 kids and trying to do 40 sessions of gym a week. So, it's also really important to remember that how much training I do is very different to what somebody else is going to need for their journey too. But my schedule is very full on with training at the moment, definitely. But I'm also training for competitions. So
are you like fight competition?
Not for Muay Thai, sorry, for Jiu-Jitsu, yes. I'm meant to have a comp in a couple of weeks, as long as my elbow's fine.
Yeah, so Em's sitting here in a bandage right now. a new injury, hey. Yesterday
I was training and just got into a bit of a sticky situation, didn't tap quick enough and potentially have a torn ligament in my elbow. So we will see on that one.
Did it hurt like hell at the time?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, Ruby, it did.
I went from from laughing at the scenario to crying on the scenario. So
did you hear me say torn ligament, Ruby?
Yes. I was a little teary.
How's it feeling right now?
Pretty tender.
Yeah.
Pretty tender, pretty fresh. She's good.
Shit.
But yeah, that's the thing. So my focus is competitions at the moment. So I'm going to start going interstate and then international for my competitions. So I got the focus of Vegas next year for Worlds, which means my training has intention at the moment. I've got a goal to get there.
That is incredible. And so random, but I just want to know, going to like a world BJJ comp, do you need to like qualify, or can anyone show up?
Anyone can
Can
show
I
up.
go?
Yeah,
Have a crack?
let's do it. Let's do it. Me and you both. We'll do like a little tour. We can do
Shotgun not
eat like
going
Ruby
against
in
Em.
Vegas. So anyone can show up. Obviously, you're not going to show up if you're not prepared because you are versing the world's best.
Yeah.
But it's still categorized in weights and belting systems. So I'm not going to go against like some 100-kilo female who's like got 10 years on me and just going to.
Yeah. So how many
Murder
years
me.
do you have of BJJ?
So I'm coming to my 4th year in jiu-jitsu now. Fourth year.
yeah.
So.
And what belts are you?
So I'm blue belt. So
How do they? What's
so
the
it goes
belting?
white, blue, purple, brown, black, and you can expect like a white belt sort of 2 years, purple white 2 years, blue sort of 2 to 3 years, purple 3 years, brown 3 to 4 years, and then black belt. So it's a long journey traditionally for it.
I feel like that's what's so cool about it.
Yeah, it's like-
because in like the world of instant gratification,
Yeah,
you're not getting your black belt tomorrow.
I know, and that's the interesting thing as well. It's like you got to spend 2 years knowing nothing as a white belt, and then you become a blue belt, and then you know nothing again because people up the ante all over again. And you know they say I think it's about like 5% of people who get to blue belt progress to purple belt because
5%.
most people who get to their blue belt have achieved their goal of getting a new belt and they quit. So it's like that's like the highest belt where people leave. No one sticks it out because they realize that to get the
God.
purple from white, it's like a 6-year journey, and they go, do I want to dedicate 6 years just to get halfway through the journey of it? So yeah, blue belt is very common for people to quit in.
Wow. I wonder how many actual black belts there are. Gee, can you Google how many BJJ black belts there are in Australia?
There'd be quite a few now. Traditionally, not as much. You know, like
I feel like BJJ's gotten huge in the last
Huge.
like 10 years.
probably even the last 5 years. Like
Yeah.
you know, 10, 15 years ago, there really wasn't a lot of like black belts available. And, you know, you got to think because we didn't have black belts, to become a black belt, you have to receive the belt from a black belt. So you would fight, you know, training
Is
overseas.
that what you have to do?
Yep. So only black belts can pass their belts out. Brown belts can give some belts.
And like
but-
you hand it
yeah, so
on, as in like I no longer have a black belt. You're
no,
getting
so
it.
they belt you system. They have a belting
Yeah,
system.
right.
But like I as a blue belt can't go and belt somebody, you know. So it's like they've got to have done their journey and earned their journey, and then they can
Yeah,
pass that
wow.
tradition on. So
We're
yeah,
so off topic, but I could talk about this
know.
all day. It's very interesting.
we always do this. We get together and we just start like in a
Oh,
full
we
tangent
actually
with 40
do, yeah.
conversations.
Normally it's about our dogs, honestly.
I was actually really sad that Nutella wasn't here. Let's just put that out there as
Nutella
well.
was a psycho. He couldn't be here.
I could have brought Millie in though. We could have had like a full like dog fight.
It's so funny because G's not a dog person, but obviously she likes to get paid, so she tolerates Nutella. But she's just got this thing where like Nutella will run and jump on her, and she's just got this voice where she's like, "Hello, Nutella," and I can just tell she doesn't want to bar of him.
She's like, God damn it, your mum.
Yeah, god damn it. No, so that's really cool, and obviously where we were going
Yep.
was your training volume and just what
Yes.
training looks like. What does a typical, like you talk about these weight sessions, what do they look like in terms of like how many exercises, sets, etc.?
Very basic. I'm not one for extravagant.
I was hoping you'd say that.
400
If you had said like
movements, no.
9 movements or whatever,
No.
I would have been like, fuck.
So I depending on like what phase I'm sort of going for, whether it's like a hypertrophy or just a maintenance sort of thing, I'll go through 2 different cycles. I'll either cycle like heavy, medium, and light days, or I'll cycle just like 2 upper, 2 4.
Yeah.
Very simple. 4 to 5 exercises depending on, you know, what movements are involved and, you know, what my goal at that point is, but
Yeah.
no more than 5 exercises, 45 minutes in and out.
It.
I do
I
not want
feel
to
like
spend any
two-
more time.
2 upper, 2 lower is just like the best thing to
I know.
default to at any time.
And
It's
some
like, fuck
people
it,
like-
I'm just doing 2 upper, 2 lower.
I know, and like I'll go through phases where I'll do like 3 lower and I'll focus a lot more on like leg development. You know, I find my legs are a lot slower growing than my upper body. But it's just like it's easy, it works, like
Yeah.
it's uncomplicated. I can go in, I know the goal, I know the exercise I'm doing, I know how to do them. I'm not going to like injure myself or look like a dork in the gym or anything like that. And it's just like, cool, I'm successful in that, on to the next one.
Yeah, no, I love it. So you mentioned you eat a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you currently?
No, I'm not tracking if that's
No,
no.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, are you currently tracking, or do you have any parameters around, I need to make sure I eat a certain amount or whatever? Like, what does that look like?
So I still just stick to my fundamental habits, which is something you would teach as well. And it's just like hitting protein targets.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've been doing this for so long now that I can pretty much gauge
Yeah, so
my
when you say
protein.
hitting protein targets, you're not tracking, weighing, counting that. You're just looking and going, do I think I've eaten enough protein today?
Pretty much, yeah. So it's, you know, I tracked meticulously for almost 4 years. So it's like I'm pretty good at going, well, I know this is good for me and I know this is a rough portion for me.
Yeah.
But I would be aiming for sort of around 140, 150 grams of protein a day. I weigh about 60 kilos, so that's sort of...
Yeah, that's a fuck ton of protein.
That's a lot of protein.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm getting my limbs ripped off my body.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
I've got to do
you want
something.
them to recover.
It's not necessarily that you need that high, but I'm, you know, with the training I do, it's how I feel best is what I do.
And I feel like your overall intake would, like, you'd be eating a fair bit to meet that training requirement. So naturally, as overall intake goes up, protein goes up too.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
If I was in like a deficit or like, you know, a fat loss phase or anything, then my protein intake's not generally that high because your calories are a lot lower.
Like, you don't have enough to play with.
Exactly. Even though that's when your protein should be high, so you can maintain it. It's hard to find that balance. It is.
Yeah.
But just my fundamentals. So I stick to like a good protein source in all my main meals and a snack. I stick to at least 2 or 3 pieces of fruit a day. Fine, if I don't eat that, I end up getting sick or I end up just not feeling the best when I'm training as much. Vegetables, 2 main meals. If they're small meals, then I'll have them in my 3 main meals. Just your basic habits that we follow. Fruit, veggies, protein, getting in some calcium, making sure that my carb sources are quality sources in my main meals, making sure if I have carbs pre-workout, they're high GI, they're easy for me to access. But I don't have any strict rules in it. I don't have any strict regimes, whether it's like no takeaway, no alcohol, no like treats or anything like that, because I find that in the current phase that I'm in, it's just not necessary for me to be so meticulous or on point with it. You know, and there'll be times when I compete, I have to cut for competitions, and that's when I rein it all in. There'll be, you know, no junk food, no fast food, no alcohol. It'll be like high water, and I'll be tracking my food again.
Yeah.
That serves a purpose at a certain time in my journey, but not for me every day.
Yeah, I think that's so perfect, and it's so on point with what we speak about in terms of, like, if someone does have a really clear, strict goal, whether it is body comp or, like you said, making weight or whatever, and they're feeling really good about tracking and having everything in place to just optimize progress towards that, that's awesome. But then when we think about you right now, it just doesn't, it's not necessary for the goal. So it just makes so much sense. I'd love to know how much you eat. Like, I wish we could secretly track you for one day, because I'd love to just know how much it actually ends up being. But in terms of, if you don't mind me asking, like, do you weigh yourself often or anything at the moment?
Like, I'll weigh myself a couple times a week. I maintain very well, so my weight doesn't really fluctuate.
What does your weight hang around?
Anywhere between like 60 and 60.8. So it's always...
Oh, like 60 and 60.8.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
So my weight doesn't, and that's without tracking at all. I just know myself and what I'm eating and what makes me feel good. And I know that if I'm starting to feel a bit, you know, bloated or a little bit heavier, it's like, cool, let's just rein it in a bit more. But my weight from day to day doesn't really change a whole lot. Yeah.
And the reason I was asking that is because I'd love to know if you, when you get to competing in BJJ, what weight would you compete at?
There's different categories. So I've competed anywhere from like under 69 and I've like bulked for them. I know. And then under 57s as well. So
you just have to cut a
little bit. So it's not a big cut, definitely not.
I feel like that would be quite easy in the sense of, like you said, right now you're quite flexible and quite chilled, so simply just tightening shit up, you probably would get 3 kilos off pretty easy.
So if I don't want to cut, if it's like a local comp, I'll just do under 64s, and that means I go in as is, no stress at all.
Yeah, let's go.
I know, right? Let's do it right now. If I do like a bigger comp or an international comp or an interstate comp, then I'll do the lower categories. That's like 4 weeks for me. 4 weeks of just tracking my food, and my weight will be exactly where it needs to be.
Do you do any of that crazy, like, get light as fuck and then like the sweatsuits and all that? Like,
No.
not probably not to that extent,
No.
but do you do anything crazy to get light and then eat a lot? You know,
Not really, no. Like, I feel like the extremities of it, of like doing water cuts, is like for professional fighters. It's like for...
I'm thinking of like the Conor McGregor
exactly.
documentary.
You're thinking of MMA fights, man. These are like local
like
comps.
McGregor
Got, like,
in the fucking
and cousins
sweatsuit.
hanging out. Like, no. So like we've had, like, if I look at, say, our fighters, for instance, you know, if they like on because they weigh in at night as well for the fighters. So like they might have to do like a water cut. So they'll end up in a sauna or they'll end up running in trackies and stuff like that just to reduce, fluid
Like
intake.
fluid, yeah.
Just to meet weight. But, I'm lucky that our comps are weighed early in the morning. So as long as you're on point, you can weigh in and then have a few snacks and have, a banana and some fluid and everything can still be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely no extreme measures. I just don't feel that. I think if you manage your body well enough and you manage your journey, you shouldn't have to take those extremities unless you're a professional fighter. Their circumstances are vastly different. Some of those professional fighters will cut, upwards of anywhere between 4 and 8 kilos in like a week before, like lead up to their fight.
They've probably got like $4 million on the line as well.
Well, that's exactly right. I'm fighting
I'd probably drop 4 kilos for 4 mil.
I'm fighting for like a little metal circle.
Little trophy.
Doesn't have my name on it. So, so it's like, it's very different, but no, like no extreme measures. I just find that, I always say like the 5 P's: preparation prevents piss poor performance. So it's like prepare yourself before you go in and you won't have to put yourself under extreme stress to succeed in that journey.
Yeah. It all makes so much sense. And I think coming back to your food, I think this is such a perfect example of what we sort of talk about with long-term nutrition. Like I kind of hate the intuitive eating message.
Yes.
Simply because I think anyone that is truly succeeding with intuitive eating is actually educated eating. Like you see people that tracked their food for years, they've gotten over tracking or they've changed their beliefs or whatever, and that's fine. But then they sort of come on the scenes with like intuitive eating. I just make sure I get enough protein every day. I make sure I do this. So it's like, well, that's not your intuition, that's your knowledge.
Yes. And I'm a strong believer in that as well because you see it with a lot of coaches. They
100.
They do all this journey 100%. And then they try to find a point of difference that sells them differently to somebody else. And they start going, I don't believe in tracking and tracking's bad for you. And it's like causes disordered eating. Let's intuitively eat. The reality and the truth behind that is if you could intuitively eat, we would have no obesity in the world because 100%. We would know from day dot. But we're raised, and every generation is different, but, we're raised in a society of like, for my age group was like, you can't leave until your plate's finished. And, my mum was poorly knowledge. Like our meals were like, friggin' a kilo of pasta with like 3-star beef mince and like a kilo of cheese on top. Like it was never high quality, but she didn't know any different either. So it's like, if I went off my intuition based on how I was raised, I would be eating like absolute, like probably like 500-600 grams of carbs a day because that's what I was raised on.
Yes, please.
Yeah, exactly. Every girl's like, please, why don't we do that? But I wouldn't be, feeling my training and I wouldn't be able to do my physique goals when I have them. And I wouldn't be feeling good because I would be eating poor quality foods.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know any different.
Yeah. I think like there's 2 massive things that come to mind there with that intuitive eating thing. Like you said, I think the coaches and we see, like you said, we see a lot of coaches that did the tracking thing, did the MyFitnessPal, flexible dieting, macros, whatever it is, coached millions of people on that. Then they've changed. And like you said, maybe they're trying to find a point of difference. Or I think it's normal to just evolve. And as you mature as a human, you're like, my priorities have changed a bit. I don't care about that as much anymore, whatever. That's totally fine. I think the issue comes in when they then start shitting on tracking.
Yes.
And they're like, no one needs to track. And that's, it's too strict and it's this and it's that. My mind goes to a place of like, if you genuinely think that, you should be refunding everyone you charged for tracking for the last 5 years.
Yep.
If you disagree with the thing that you taught for 5 years, fucking refund everyone. Yep. But you're not going to do that. But really, it's easy for a person that did track for a really long time to then be like, oh, now I do just eat intuitively. And like I said, they say things like get enough protein, get enough fiber. I would argue that if you hadn't ever tracked your food, you wouldn't know, are you getting enough protein, are you getting enough fiber?
And a fiber's a massive one because like I'll say to people like, hey, like I'll do check-ins and I'm like, man, your fibers are like 4 grams. What the hell are you doing? And they're like, what do you mean? I ate like a kilo of salad. And I'm like, lettuce doesn't really do a whole lot for you guys. But like they weren't aware of that. They weren't aware that.
I feel like protein and fiber are the biggest things when people start tracking, the typical sort of I eat well, and no shame on people because you do think you're eating well and you try and do the right things, but it's so common if you can relate to starting tracking and thinking, fuck, I don't get much protein or fiber. That's what I see more than anything.
Yeah, they're sitting at like 60 grams of protein and like under 10 grams of fiber.
Yeah.
But again, it's education and how are you to know differently and how are you to do better and, like raise your kids with different ideas as well, unless you're educated on it too.
Yeah.
So I feel like it comes down to exactly what you said before. It's like you can intuitively eat once you've put the time and effort into tracking, and not just like loosely tracking, it's like being fairly meticulous with it, you know. And there's obviously always a discussion in like disordered behaviors when it comes to tracking and eating and training as well.
I think like if that's you, if you know that it's actually a very negative thing for you, then it's obviously not the right fit. But I think when you're just Gen Pop and
exactly right.
It's like budgeting. You know, you can't expect, most people kind of just spend how they want when you're a teenager and whatever. And then you get to a point in your early adult life and you think, fuck, if I want to get somewhere with this, I've actually got to monitor it for a while.
Yeah.
And I think nutrition is the same. And I think like when we talk about moving away from tracking and that sort of intuitive, and like I said, I prefer to call it like educated eating. When I talk to the girls in Eat Like Ruby, especially about eating out and things like that, one thing I say a lot when we talk about eating out is we don't track our food for the sake of hitting perfect numbers. You track your food so you can actually learn what a good, like a quote, good day of eating looks like for you. What does enough protein look like for you? What does portion control? You know, people throw out the term portion control so easy. Your portions when you're doing BJJ a million times a week versus mine versus Shaq riding 100 kilometers, like a quote good portion looks very different from person to person. And I think, how do you know that until you've actually monitored it in a somewhat, I don't like to use the word strict, but just in a like diligent way of really learning. And then like when we talk about eating out or moving away from tracking or anything like that, really what I see with tracking is you do start to truly understand and learn those things. It's so common to go through that phase of like, fuck, I didn't realize how little protein I ate. I didn't realize how little fiber I ate. And I think even everyone sort of has those foods or those meals that they've eaten for a really long time and then they start tracking and then they're like, I didn't realize my favorite dinner was 950 calories. It's starting to make sense why I'm not achieving weight loss. And you learn those things and then you can start to take those learnings into moving away from tracking or going out for a meal or anything like that. But I don't think, you don't just fly out the womb knowing portion control. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, I get it. And the thing is as well, it's like, you got to think, some people have different ideas on when they like their meals. You know, for me, I like to eat brekkie, lunch, dinner, and snacks, you know. I had a client call up yesterday and she's like, I hate eating dinner. I just want to eat brekkie, snacks, lunch, and have a snack for dinner. I just don't want to eat at night. Cool.
I hate eating in the morning. I've spoken about this with my own. Like, I normally have my first meal around like 10:30.
Yep, I'm the same. So I'll generally, because I PT in the morning and do all my coaching, it's like my first meal's at like probably like 11. But then I'm like, between 11 and 6, it's mine. It's
on. But I think that's so funny when you see things then that are like, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And it's like, that's such a blanket statement. Like, it's so basic.
And it's so dependent on your life. Like, I wake up at sort of 4 or 5 in the morning for coaching. So it's like, if I was to smash a meal down at 4 a.m., man, I've tried to train on food. I just can't do it, you know. But then you got to look at, you know, someone who's got kids and stuff and their mornings are, you know, busy packing their lunches and getting them ready for school, or, you know, somebody who works a job, they've got other things going on. And, you know, if breakfast makes them feel good and that's like works into their schedule, then perfect. Like, of course, do it, you know, but I wouldn't say that there's any strict rules on what meals or when you should be consuming them either.
Yeah. And I think that's why I love sort of flexible dieting, and in the sense of like making sure you get enough protein, make sure you're eating enough fiber, but not like eating exact macro targets and all that sort of thing. I think like that sort of true flexible dieting of learning what, like I said, what a good day looks like for you, and then how to actually be flexible and tweak that to really suit you. I think that's the ultimate place to get to. And the other thing that I was thinking about with that intuitive eating stuff before, I feel like I've said this on the podcast like over a year ago. You know, people sort of try and run that narrative of like, oh, like we were born to know how to eat, and like in the caveman days, everyone knew how to eat or whatever. Like in the caveman days, you couldn't walk into Woolworths and have insane access to the most highly palatable foods. Like it's so unrealistic to say like we should just know how to eat because we were born.
I know, and you take like
do that.
Woolworths and Coles aside, where you've got access to still healthy foods. Every corner you go past, there's a McDonald's, there's a Hungry Jack's, there's a KFC, there's fast food everywhere.
Yeah.
And, you know, to the point that they use colours to psychologically affect you so you can go in and eat those foods. Like, they're hitting you without you even realising that. You won't even be thinking about McDonald's, and then you see the colour red and you're like, that sounds pretty good. A cheeseburger.
Every time I drive past McDonald's, I'm like, I would love a cheeseburger and fries.
And that's
I
the
would.
thing. They attack you on a psychological level.
And I don't think I've had one in
aware of.
years, but I would fucking love one.
But so it's like, you know, you can go into Coles and you can make good choices still, but like you're just walking down the road and then suddenly you're, you know, demolishing 1,000-calorie burger and chips.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and that no one's policing it. You're walking to Coles right now, buy a full block of chocolate, eat it in your car.
No one's going to know about it.
No one's policing that.
So it's like, how are you meant to, you know, intuitively know portion control when it is palatable and you know, foods are designed to get us addicted to them and they're so accessible for us all the time that it's like, how are we going to learn balance with it without understanding what's actually in our food and the quality of it as well?
Yeah, and I think this is just my opinion. Like, if someone is genuinely like a quote clean eater, or they only want to eat organic or paleo or whatever, if you truly love that and it works for you, like, that's awesome, go off. But if you are like, I actually do just want Macca's every now and then, and I do want some chocolate, and I do want to be able to have cake at work when it's someone's birthday and whatever, to me, that's where majority of human beings fall. And that's where I think, okay, so let's learn how to do it. Like I said, if everyone could eat organic, clean food for the rest of their life.
Nobody wants that.
Then,
I'm sorry.
Right? Like, we don't. But some people do, and that's perfect. But if you're someone who, if you think about, I always say to people, like, we're going to be eating for the rest of your life. If you think about, am I probably going to want to eat McDonald's again in my life? Probably yes. Am I going to want to have some chocolate again at some point? Probably yes. So that's where I come back and think, okay, so it's worth actually learning how to do so.
Of course, yeah. And otherwise it's like people fall into these fad diets because they get instant results. And it's like, cool, for the first 4 to 6 weeks, you might have gotten, you know, a drop in weight or a drop in measurements. And then it's like, cool, so you're only eating like steak for the rest of your life, or you're only eating fats for the rest of your life, or like you're only eating like seafood for the rest. And it's like, you're going to have a kid's birthday party one day and you're going to tell your son or daughter, I can't have cake with you because I'm on a carnivore diet. Like,
I only eat meat.
That's a reality to it. It's like, is that realistic for your life? And like you said, for the majority of people, that's not realistic. It's like maybe 1% of like extremities in the world, people will be like, yeah, I just want to follow a meat diet. It's like, great. If that works for you, fantastic. But it's like, for most people, like I know if I had a kid and they said, hey, mum, are you having cake with me? I ain't telling that little sucker no. There's no way. I'm eating that cake with them. Like that food brings people joy. So it's important to find, you know, a diet or a regime that works for you that includes the foods that you do love still.
Yeah. And I even spoke on the pod a few weeks ago about like time of the month cravings.
Yes.
And I spoke a bit about like having the knowledge and the skill and everything to potentially have a few days of higher calories or move to maintenance or whatever. And I don't want to get too off topic, but with that I was saying like that's so dependent on the individual. Like that time every month might be really like non-existent for you. It might not be a thing, but we know for a fact with a lot of girls it is like big cravings, big hunger, energy, whatever. So I was saying on there, if you could learn how to increase your intake and factor in some of those things you're craving in a really controlled, structured, conscious, positive way, that can be a game changer for someone who feels like they, quote, fall off track every month. And I think when you look at sort of the typical challenges or just like shitty kind of generic coaching and rules and whatever, I was saying on there, like you see those coaches that are like, just have a cup of herbal tea. You know, and it's
I don't want herbal tea. I want a Milo.
literally. And, you know, we see the same thing with eating out where people might join a challenge and it's like, okay, so anytime you eat out, just get the meat and veg or just get the salad. Yeah. And I think it's so important to ask yourself, okay, so if that's all I'm learning from my coach or my challenge or whatever I'm doing, am I going to do that forever? Am I, every single time I eat out, am I just going to get the salad forever? And if I think about eating out and maybe wanting to get a burger or a pizza at one time, if all I've only been taught is just get the salad, you have no idea how to do that and how to navigate that. Like physically with, you know, if you're tracking or like in terms of physical progress and that sort of thing, but also mentally and emotionally, if you've just been drilled to get the salad, get the meat and veg, have the cup of herbal tea, whatever. What about any other time you want to navigate it differently?
Yeah, and it's like, how does it make you feel as well? Does it bring like shame to your journey? Do you, you know, feel disassociated when it comes to social settings? So it's like, yeah, you really do have to look at just like the big picture. It's like great to look at 10 weeks, you know, and it gets you through that 10 weeks, but what next?
Yeah.
After that 10 weeks, what do you do? Where do you go? Who do you have to tell you what to do? It's like, you've got to be able to find circumstances that allow you to be educated enough to support your own journey
navigate
as well.
things. Yeah.
You're not always going to have a coach. You're not always going to have somebody around you who can say, hey, get on track.
Or just that one rule of like, just get the salad.
Yeah.
heaven forbid one time I don't want the salad. Like,
and you know what? The reality is the salad's probably got just as much calories as the burger anyway. So you're sad eating the salad when you could have been happy eating the burger. Gosh, picturing how I'd feel going out and paying $25 for a salad.
Yeah, and then like you said, probably eating way more than you realise.
Levi's beside me eating a cheesecake or something, and I'm just like, oh, fiber.
What does Levi eat like?
Oh, you do not want to know, guys.
So Levi's Emma's partner. How long have you been together?
Coming up 4 years.
Is he like, I hate to put this on people, but I just have to ask, is he the sort of person that can eat whatever the fuck he wants?
Oh man, you would hate him. You would elbow him. So Levi's like, I'm going to put it in perspective. He's almost 2 meters tall. He weighs about 74 kilos.
So that's crazy because that's the same height as Shaq, but that's about 25 kilos lighter than
Yeah, he just walks around with an 8-pack. It's ridiculous, guys. But genetics, I'm going to put this out here, genetics. He doesn't eat healthy or eat protein to be deserving of this physique, okay? This is like...
Yeah, so that's what I said. Like, I hate when you see someone in shape and people just go, oh, they can eat whatever the fuck they want. But Levi actually is that person.
So I remember, I always tell people this too. We were driving one day and we drove past a cheesecake store and he was like, man, a cake would be good. And I was like, we can go get one. And he goes, nah, it's not my birthday. We have to show, we can't get one unless it's our birthday. And I was like, what? You know, so he grew up in Bundy, like Bundaberg, a little bit quieter town. Didn't really know this. And I was like, yeah, we could just walk in and get a cheesecake. And that's exactly what we did.
Levi, no one's policing this.
We walked in and got a full family cheesecake. And I think for about 3 months, at least twice a week, he was eating a family cheesecake to himself, just like smashing 12,000 calories for lunch. And then that would be his nutrition for the day. This is a guy who gets up and like fights and, you know, he probably trains 40, 50 hours a week as well and like intense training. So he's not, he doesn't really eat that great. But, you know, when he comes into a fight camp, his eating's very different to mine again. So he prioritizes breakfast. He likes a really good hearty breakfast, just high calories there. And then he'll have like a light lunch and he doesn't really get interested in dinner. So by that point, he's so fatigued from his workouts, he just wants to crash and go to sleep. But
do you guys eat together?
Breakfast, it just depends on our schedules because we're both doing so much at the moment as well. So, you know, if I PT and he trains in the morning, we might go out for breakfast afterwards. But if we're both like, you know, looking at our food and eating really good, then not really, because I'll tend to eat, you know, my cooked meals. I'll pre-plan for myself. And he sort of just tends to grab a servo sanger or something and just does his best.
Super different. And I think that's even cool to point out because I think people just assume, like for us, oh, you've probably got this Fitspo partner and you're all meal prepping together and you like it's all healthy. But like it's the same. I said the other week with Shaq and I, and no shame on Shaq, but he's in a completely different like phase and goals and training and everything to me right now. So I literally had like my omelette for dinner and he had a whole pizza and a whole tub of Ben & Jerry's.
Yep. And he can do that. You know, he can do that for his phase as well.
And I think people look at us as coaches and go, that sort of like, it's so easy for you kind of mentality. And I'm like, I'm still sitting on the couch eating my eggs while my husband eats a pizza and tub of ice cream.
And that's the thing. And like, if I go to a cut as well, it's the same. I'm like, I start tracking my food. I start like meal prepping. I've got it all pre-planned in my containers. And then he'll be like, you want to go get steak tonight? And I'm like,
You're like, yes, more than anything.
Yeah, but I'm like, for the next 4 weeks, I'm tied into my containers, okay? And he, you know, he'll go and get his like Domino's pizza and his garlic scrolls, or, you know, he'll go and get his like, whatever he wants because he can. And, you know, he's one of those individuals too that doesn't really feel too bad if he doesn't eat a lot of like nutritious foods. You know, I look at myself and if I cut fruit or vegetables out for a week, man, I start craving it and I'm like, my body's just like, what are you doing to me? Like, when are we getting this back into our system? Why are we eating like this?
It's so funny. I was telling G in the car on the way here, like Shaq's just not a veggie person, and he has been having, shout out Shaq, he has been having like steak, rice and veg as a little stir fry for dinner, woohoo, but he's just never been a veggie person. And he used to like have a legitimate, like his rebuttal to me when I would say like, you don't eat veggies, he used to say to me, I eat onion. And he would be like so serious. And I said to G in the car, I'm not even kidding, OG followers will remember this because I put this on my stories. This is years ago. I wrote on the shopping list, lettuce. Shaq bought me a full raw cabbage.
Same thing. Practically the same thing. They look similar.
I opened the fridge and I'm like, just like sitting on the top shelf of the fridge is full raw cabbage. It's like a fucking bowling ball. And I'm like,
they're massive
why
too,
would we
and they're
have
heavy.
this? Yeah, it was so heavy. And I'm like, why do we have this? And Shaq's like, didn't you want that? And then it took me a minute and I'm like, is this my lettuce? And he's like, yeah. And he was like so serious. And I'm like, we're now the owners of a full raw cabbage.
We're having chow mein tonight.
Literally. And every night for 2 weeks.
Yep.
But like, he just is like not a veggie person.
Yeah, well, like
at all.
Levi's the same. He just goes, well, I feel good eating what I eat, so why would I implement vegetables?
Sometimes I'm like, yeah, but
try it.
could you feel better?
Give it a month and tell me you still feel good when you don't have vegetables.
Do you just not know any better?
I try to like blend them and hide them into his foods like a toddler sometimes.
That's so funny. What are your dinner? Like, what do you normally have for dinner?
Again, it's so
I'm kind of like living through M right now with my low calories. I'm
yeah,
like,
look, it's so dependent on my
about all
schedule.
these
So like,
foods.
if I looked at an average day for me, it would be like PTs between 5 and 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would do jiu-jitsu for 2 hours straight afterwards, and then I would have breakfast and then do jiu-jitsu. And then I would go for like a walk, do like stuff with Millie. I've got to like walk my dog. Me and Liv, I would have some like couple time. We would go to the beach. And then I would train in the afternoons. I'd do like a weight session and then I would go back to jiu-jitsu at night. So, like this week dinners for me are schnitzel, mash and veg. Simple, basic,
too easy. Yeah.
I'm living for slow cooker meals at the moment because they're one pot. They're so easy. I can like chuck in some chicken breast, some pasta, some sauces, vegetables, and just leave it for 8 hours. And I'm like, when I get home, I know I've got food cooked and it's cooked for the next 4 days. I don't have to worry about it. So I'm definitely all for the slow cooker feeds at the moment, but nothing fancy, nothing extravagant, just nice basic meals that just tick all my boxes.
Yeah. I feel like you're in such a sweet spot of like just, like you said, ticking the boxes and like knowing you're including shit you should be including, but not really overthinking it and just enjoying it.
Not fearing getting snacks if I want to, like
Yeah.
if I go to the shops and I'm like, hey, those lamingtons look good, I'm like, I'm grabbing those lamingtons because there's no rules at this
Such a
point.
random
Like,
lamington.
oh man, I haven't had one in years. I bought
Neither
finger
have I.
lamingtons the other day. They're the perfect size, man. They're like the perfect texture and consistency of chocolate cake and coconut. So
That is so funny, yeah.
when you're
I
out of
have
your
not
fat
had
loss
one.
phase, get into the
I have
the
not had one
lamingtons,
in
guys.
years. That's funny as. If we think about a lot of Eat Like Ruby girls starting a fat loss phase right now, coming into 10-week fat loss phase, we have such a mix of newbies that have never been in Eat Like Ruby before. A lot of them probably never tracked, flexible dieted. We then have the girls that have done a lot of Eat Like Ruby. I think we have a really cool group of girls in this round that have picked up everything that we've put down over the years, and this is their sort of like very intentional deficit for the year. And I think that's so cool because I've watched so many of them, some of them with me doing like a muscle gain high calorie phase, some of them off on their own, just doing training with me, but really kind of like not spending the whole year in that diet energy. And this particular round is their knuckle down phase, which I just think is so cool. But then, like I said, we've got a lot of the beginners as well. And I just feel like my best piece of advice, I always say, and we say this actually in the phase, but it's like really have a think about what you've come in for, where you're at, where you want to go, like meet yourself where you're at. If you're someone who is literally day one, what the fuck is flexible dieting?
Yeah.
What is going on? First of all, just know that if you are like day one and this is very new to you, that feeling is so normal. The whole like overwhelm, confusion, take a few weeks to find my groove, that is so normal. But I always say like if you're in that position and you're someone that's like wants to ease in every week and implement one new habit, that's perfect. And equally if you're on the flip side and you're quite educated and you know what you're doing and you're like, this is the time I'm knuckling down for 10 weeks and that feels really positive and awesome for you, that's fucking perfect too.
Yeah.
Like there's no one way to navigate it. And like I always say, there's no right or wrong, but I think it's just so important to think about why you joined, what you want to get out of it, what you want that 10 weeks to look like, and what sort of person you are. Because I think we get the people who do love to knuckle down and really do things quite strictly for a time frame, and then you get the people that are like, no, that's not me. I like to be a bit more flexible and gradually ease into things. And I don't think either of those are wrong. I think it's like right to think about what's right for you.
Of course, and it's like it's your own journey, it's your own lane as well. It's like if you got so caught up in like, watching somebody who shares frequently and they're on like 5 or 6 kilo fat loss and you're only on like 2, it's like that's okay as well. It's like everyone's body composition's different, everyone's goals are different, everyone's lifestyle is different, and it's like like you said, pick your goal, understand what it takes to get that goal. And it's like, even if you spend the 10 weeks just chipping away at understanding and educating yourself, it's like, that's success. That's a positive. It's like,
so true.
Imagine that 10 weeks after you've like educated yourself and everything, what you're going to achieve.
Literally. And I always say to the girls in the fat loss phase, like, yes, it's 10 weeks, but for me, like I always say, we're going to be eating for the rest of our life. I want to give you everything you need so that at week 11, you know what you're doing. And so even if, like Em said, if you come in as a newbie and you're learning things and there is that bit of confusion and overwhelm, first of all, be open to the trial and error. Like, if it's like anything in life, it's going to take you a little bit to find your groove. Sure. And if you for the first week, you're like, I'm just going to track my food. Like, I'm not even going to look at protein or anything. I'm literally just going to track. And then the next week, I'm going to look at protein. And the next week, I'm going to look at water. And the next week, I'm going to look at steps. Like Em said, if you implement one new habit every week, you get to week 10 and suddenly you're nailing like calories, protein, fiber, water, steps, all these things. And if you've gradually implemented those things in a flexible, enjoyable way, like we talk about, then like I said, you go into week 11 and you just keep it going.
Exactly. And the beauty of that as well is like, because you now have the knowledge, it's not like you've just gone into a phase and someone's gone, here's what you're eating for 10 weeks. Don't ask me any questions. It's like, you know everything now. So it's like, in like 6 months time, if you go, oh, look, I've let things go a little bit. I'm not really happy with where I'm at the moment. Cool. What did I learn in those 10 weeks? I'm like, oh, cool. I learned that I need roughly this much protein. I learned that this much step works for me. I learned that this much water makes me feel good. Yeah. And then you just start reining your life back into those old habits. I'm like, such a strong believer in having these foundation habits, because it's like, no matter what part of your phase of life you're in, you know that like if I start like gaining weight, I'm going to go like, hey, I'm probably eating a bit too much takeout and I'm aware of that. Let's rein that in. Or I'm getting headaches. I'm probably not drinking much water at the moment. I'm going to rein that in. It gives you the power to make your own journey successful at any point, and not always having to go, where's a coach, or I don't have somebody keep me accountable. It's like you can learn to keep yourself accountable and learn to succeed in your own journey.
And almost like we said, it's like if you have just been given those one set of rules, like every time you go out, get a salad, then that's all you're going to learn. So like you're saying, the more you can actually get the education to be like, okay, I am eating out. What is my goal? What does this look like? What does my week look like, etc.? Does it serve me to get the salad, or does it suit me right now to get a burger or a pizza or whatever? And I think that's so beneficial. And even coming back to one thing you were saying of like, once you learn it, I always say to people, like, education is literally the number one value in Eat Like Ruby, because I want people to have the knowledge and the facts to rein things in and tighten things up anytime they want to, or like go off and enjoy a holiday anytime they want to. But I want you to actually know how. And I think it's so cool to think about, especially coming into this phase and this time of year. If you can really learn, like you're saying, those foundation habits right now, get a bit of success, get the ball rolling, whatever, then you might go to maintenance or have a diet break or whatever for Christmas. You come into New Year, I think that's such a pivotal time for people to realize where they're at in their journey. Do you come into New Year and think, fuck, I feel like shit, I went too hard? And did you spend most of the festive season feeling quite guilty and regretful about what you were doing? Come into the new year and then think, fuck, I've got to join some really shit challenge or whatever. I've got
First one available, let's go.
Yeah, and I've got to like, quote, be good again or whatever. Or do you come into the new year and for the people that have done, like worked with Em or worked with me or whatever and got that education, you can still get to the new year and think, fuck, I went a little too hard at Christmas. Yes. Like, it's not about being perfect for the rest of your life, but I always say it's such a different energy for a person who feels very guilty and shit about the way they navigated it and they are trying to find that challenge or whatever, versus a person that is just like, oh, went a little bit too hard, but I know what to do about it.
Exactly right, yeah.
That is such a different energy, and like mentally and emotionally, you might still be like, oh, okay, I've got to tighten shit up.
Yep.
But again, you feel empowered, you feel in control, you know what you're doing.
And that's one of the biggest things. Like, I've had clients come to me and they've just like so shameful when they like eat a cookie, or they're so shameful when they go out. And it's like, I don't even focus on what the scale, the data says at this point. It's like right now the primary focus is making sure that you can live a life that you don't shame or punish yourself for. So it's like, if you get to the end of like festive season or whatever phase you're at and you shame yourself, it's like, that's what we're working on. It's like, that's what you've got to do, because if you lived your life constantly with this idea of like a perfect regime and perfect habits, it's like, boring. It's unrealistic. It's like,
and it ties in with everything we've been saying.
Exactly.
Like, do you think you're never going to have the burger again
Yeah.
and you're never going to eat the cake again?
Yeah.
So if every time you do that, there is shame, it's a huge red flag for the rest of your life.
100%. And it's like, and it's also understanding like the line between it too. It's like, are you, going out and having those festive seasons, understanding that that's a part of life, and those memories with your family or your kids or your friends, they serve a lot of positivity to your life too. So it's like same as like good food will at some point as well. But it's like if you went through like a festive season or someone's birthday and you were just like so strict on yourself, and then you're like, everyone's just like, oh, what's Ruby over here doing, like at my party, having a salad, not drinking, like doing nothing. It's like, if you want to do that because you got a face, fantastic, and you've got to like,
if you genuinely feel
yes,
good about
exactly
it.
right.
Yeah.
You've always got to like honor your own goals as well and never feel shamed by what someone else is doing. But if you're doing that because you like are shaming yourself, trying to like prove how strict you can be, then it's like, that's why the education is important. That's why the education comes into it. It's like, that's what keeps you understanding that you can have a goal and still have flexibility and then rein it in when you need to, or you can have a goal and remove that flexibility if it doesn't serve a purpose at that time. So it does all come back down to education though.
And you can even, I think it's so common, and this is not a bad thing at all. I think it's so common, especially with the girls that have been in Eat Like Ruby and they're quite educated. I think it's common to spend even like winter just kind of cruising a little bit, chilling a little bit, and then get to this time of year, whether you're actually coming into the fat loss phase or you're just doing it yourself or whatever, but be like, oh, okay, I'm going to tighten things up. And it's like you said for yourself, you might hit points where you're like, oh, okay, I might track again for a little bit or whatever. So that there's a difference between like being completely off track and then feeling like you've got to do something super hectic versus just chilling for a while and then being like, oh, I might tighten it up a bit. And I think, like if you're doing that in an energy that feels really negative and restrictive versus someone that's just like, oh, even me last year, like I didn't really track much. And then when we said we were getting married, I'm like, okay, I'm going to tighten things up. And it was never like, oh my God, I've been eating like a dickhead. I've got to fucking change everything. But I was just like, okay, I've been chilling and now I want to just dial it in.
And even like
very big difference.
Your habits would have been much the same. You still would have been eating good quality food. You might have just been having a few more takeaways or a few more snacks. It's like, just because you weren't tracking doesn't mean you weren't like monitoring the quality of your food intake as well. So it's like,
and that's something I talk about even when it comes to eating out, because I think so many people just think you're either eating perfectly like a robot over here or you're done a complete 180 and you're eating like a fuckwit over here. And there is such a big middle ground all the time. Like there's so many ways you can stop. Even if you think about the festive season, if you think about the whole month of December, you might have 10 days where you're like, I've got an event, I'm just going to enjoy it. And then you've got 20 days where you're like, I'm going to perfectly track.
Exactly.
That's cool. Or you might go to an event and go, yeah, I'm going to enjoy the hell out of the pizza, but I'm not going to drink at this event.
Bit of balance.
It doesn't have to be perfect over here, not drinking, getting the salad, saying no to everything, or fuck it, I'm going all the way over here.
12 drinks deep and 3 pizzas full.
One of everything, please. 2 of everything. Like there's such a big thing there. One thing that came to my mind, and I would just love to literally hear what you say about this, because I don't want to shame anyone, but I want people to know how possible this is. Do you ever feel guilty about food?
No.
No, neither.
I used to. Like when I first started my journey, for sure, like I was on such strict regimes. So it was like,
just as a side note, we'll link Emma's like first ep in the notes, because I think in that first ep you spoke about your whole like competing journey and stuff. And
that's the thing. So like when I first started, it was for sure strict. Even post competition, I had these like food rules in my head that it had to look a certain way. My meals had to be within 350 calories. My snacks had to be and it was like, it was strict. And then, when I educated myself, I started educating a lot of other women. I started learning how their mindset worked as well. Obviously helps my journey too.
That's such an underrated thing. I think coaching other people and watching other people and like seeing how their mindsets work and thinking like, fuck, I would never think like that.
But even the idea, it's like, I would shame let's say like someone, for instance, they might shame themselves for eating a block of chocolate, but if their mate came to them and said, I was feeling a bit down, ate a block of chocolate, you're not going to shame your friend for doing that. You're going to be like, look, shit happens. Like, what can we do to like help you? Like, what else can I do for you? So it's like, once I got out of those strict regimes and I started realizing that I could have flexibility and still maintain a good physique and still feel good and still go to events as well, it was like, the guilt was gone. I realized that there was no food rules. There was no food restrictions. There was not one set protocol I had to go with. So it's like, I have no shame when I like eat ice cream because like ice cream's just part of a life, you know?
Yeah.
Same as like I don't shame when I like eat vegetables because vegetables nourish my body. So it's like you
Yeah.
remove those rules and you learn that everything can be consumed in moderation, and then suddenly you just live life.
Yeah, and I think the reason I wanted to say that is because I'm the same. And when you were saying before, like some people feel shame about eating a cookie or whatever, I think you forget that that is actually some people's life all the time, every day, in that sort of battle of like trying to be good, wanting to eat everything, whatever. And I just want to point out to people, like I said, no shame or anything, but you can absolutely get to a point where that's not the case.
Yeah. It takes time, and, you know, and it's like rewiring our habits, rewiring our brain, rewiring our thought process. But it's like, you got to ask who's putting those strict regimes on you, who's putting those protocols. Is it someone? Is it yourself? Like, what makes you think that there's certain foods out there that couldn't be consumed? Is it some freaking Vogue magazine saying, oh no, like you can't eat cake today? Like, what is it? What's your reason? And understand your why. I think like, you know, I'm a big believer in having a goal for yourself, but having a goal higher than yourself too. So it's like, would you want, you know, let's go back to the kids. Would you want your daughter raised thinking that she couldn't go out and have a drink or go out to dinner and stuff like that? Because it's not protocols you would put on your friends or your family or your kids. So it's like, why is it placed on you?
Yeah. Yeah, so true. I feel like a million things just came to my mind. That's honestly like all so true. And I think like to speak to the current fat loss phase girls, whether you're in the Eat Like Ruby fat loss phase or you're just doing your own fat loss phase right now or whatever, like I said, I think the biggest thing to think about is if you are new or you are a little bit confused or overwhelmed or whatever, let that be okay.
Yes.
Like it is a learning process. But even I think you can get into like week 2 or week 3 and people are like, I'm not making the progress I want yet or whatever. And it's like, you might have spent 20 years doing something one way and we're now 14 days into a different way. Could we give it